Okay, everybody, we're about to get started here. We have a very interesting program ahead of us. First, I'd like to start this off by handing over the reins. I'd like to introduce Brandon Naas, who's our incoming chair of the City Club Missoula Board of Directors for 2026. He'll be introducing these forums for the rest of the year. He's a VP of the Treasury Management Sales Officer, First Security Bank of Missoula, and has worked actively as the vice chair and informed development for the past few years in City Club, lives in Lolo with his family, and that's about enough introduction. So, Brandon.
Thanks, Alex. Well, good morning. I hope I don't crash the plane on my first meeting, so apologies for any missteps. But wanted to thank you all for being here today. As Alex said, my name is Brandon Naas. I'm the chair of City Club for 2026, and I'm absolutely honored to sit in this role as I have some pretty big shoes to fill. Unfortunately, my feet are small, so we'll see how it goes. City Club has a mission of bringing people together to talk, learn, and maybe even debate some topics that are vital to the community of Missoula. These forums are brought to you to engage in the free spirit of exchange of thought. But that free exchange must also be protected by civility and respect. Presenters are here to bring their expertise to share with the group, and we appreciate them for taking their time out of their busy schedules to be here today. Each forum is put together by an amazing City Club Forum committee. This entire board chips in to set up the room and run each meeting. My first thank you goes out to Jenny Rohrbach, who is outside. You saw her as you checked in. She's the administrator of City Club, who will actually be leaving us this month for a new chapter in her life. So congrats to Jenny. The board of City Club directors, if you're here, please stand up or just give a wave. All these folks volunteer their time to put these forums on and to sit on the committee. So thank you to them. We're excited to announce that we have a new administrator, Kristen Fitzpatrick, and she will be here next month. A special thank you to our executive level sponsors, Blackfoot Communications and First Security Bank. Our executive level sponsors are key partners in helping expand audience access and public awareness of upcoming forums. We are grateful to all of our sponsors at all sponsorship levels for their generosity, advocacy for our mission. We invite you to join as a sponsor or a member by visiting our website, cityclubmissoula.com. Thanks to Missoula Community Access Television for recording all of our forums as part of their media assistant grants to nonprofit organizations. MCAT serves our community on cable channels 189 and 190. You can view our past forums on MCAT's YouTube channel. And again, thank you all for your attendance and support of City Club for the past 21 years. We're now old enough to serve beer and wine at our forums. All kidding aside, let's dig into today's topic, the what and when of the why, updates on the development going on right down the road. Today we have three presenters. First will be Andrew Hagemeyer, Jeff Smith, and then we'll follow up with Matt Malott. Andrew Hagemeyer is the Director of Community and Economic Development for Missoula County, where he leads strategic economic and land development efforts to promote community vitality, support economic growth, and expand housing opportunities. During his 9 years with the county, Andrew has played a key role in shaping development at the Y, authoring the area's planning foundation and leading the creation of its regulatory framework. He is currently focused on advancing public-private partnerships to deliver critical infrastructure to that area. Andrew? Jeff Smith is the CEO of WGM Group, a multidisciplinary planning, engineering, environmental, and design firm that has been actively involved in the Y area for decades. WGM Group has played a central role in planning, designing, and building many of the area's industrial developments and residential neighborhoods. Nearly 20 years ago, WGM helped Missoula County and the city of Missoula extend sanitary sewer infrastructure that serves much of the Y today. Most recently, Jeff led the Y infrastructure planning effort in partnership with Missoula County and several partnering firms, including HDR, Big Sky Public Relations, and Echo Northwest, focused on delivering an implementable plan to support long-term community and economic development and sustainable growth. And last, you'll hear from Matt Malott, is the founder and managing principal of Sterling Commercial Real Estate Advisors, Sterling CRE, and Sterling Capital Investment Group, Sterling CIG. Both have been active in commercial brokerage and development of the Y for the last decade, including the Missoula Amazon facility, Grass Valley Industrial Park, and Grass Valley Gardens. Matt lives at the Y with his family and wants to see it grow into the next generation, or the next great Missoula neighborhood with a distinct sense of place. So first, we'll have Andrew come up and enlighten us. Thank you.
Did anyone else have the refrigerator break this morning? Besides me? No? Okay. Well, apparently nothing I touch works. I'm Andrew Hagemeyer with Missoula County, and it's really exciting to see such a big crowd here. There's lots of familiar faces of people who work or have some sort of relationship with the Y. I think we're all really happy to see you all here. So what I'm here to talk about today is, why is Missoula County so focused right now on the Y? What is going on? What are we trying to solve for? Well, we're trying to solve for two really big problems that we have in our community. First is issues around housing, and second, it's issues around our shrinking industrial land base. So when we talk about why the Y, these are the things that we're talking about. And I'm going to talk a little bit in depth about both of these two different issues. So starting with the why. Well, problem one, housing. If we didn't have these shades down, and they should be down because it's bright outside, but you could see all the mountains, the wonderful amenities that we have around here. And Missoula has a really high quality of life. And while we've got these great natural amenities, the access that we've provided to them was by design. It was by choice, right? So we as a community decided to lobby to get Congress to designate the Rattlesnake as a national recreation area. We decided as a community, we chose to clean up the Clark Fork River and remove the dam. We chose to have a vibrant downtown. We chose to build one of the nicest libraries in the entire country, where you could look out the window right now and see elk on open space that we chose to protect. So we have a really high quality of life that we chose. And that high quality of life is one of the things that's driving growth in our community. So there's this theory that we planners have. It's called locational theory. And it's a theory on why businesses and people choose to locate where they do. So for my parents, the locational factor that was most important for them in choosing a location was the economy. It was economic. It was their job. Their job told them where to go. But that's not the case anymore, correct? The explosion in remote work, our society is becoming more footloose, and businesses and people can choose where they locate now for a whole subset of different reasons than before in the past. And one of those drivers is quality of life. So we have a little bit of a dilemma on our hands in Missoula. We have this really high quality of life. And communities like us that have this high quality of life that's driven from natural amenities around us, who do not meet their growth challenges, can't remain affordable and inclusive. So that Venn diagram here, that's example I have on the board, the intersection of these three things doesn't exist. You have to choose two. So we as a community have chosen to have that high quality of life, but we've also chosen to aspire to remain affordable and inclusive. Now I say aspire because I think we all agree that we're not quite meeting that, right? Housing prices have gotten higher and higher. So the challenge is we're not quite keeping up with the growth. So if you think about the Missoula Valley outside city limits, in the next 20 years in the Missoula Valley outside city limits, we anticipate approximately 1,000 or 12,000 more people. That's 6,000 more homes that we need to find room for. So we need to increase supply and increase diversity of our housing stock. The low-density rural development that we used to rely on in the past is not going to meet these housing needs. So that's problem one that we're trying to solve for at the Y. Problem two is our shrinking industrial land base. Now, we all know about all the mill closures over the past few years and all the jobs that were lost, and that's all really, really important. But I'm not going to talk about that because there's another reason why our industrial land base is really important. That's for our tax base. So I'm not an expert in property taxes, but Commissioner Slotnick right there likes to talk about property taxes, the county budget, as a pie, right? The county adopts a budget, and that's the pie. And then we send it to the state, and through all these complex formulas that the legislature sets, they assign each one of you a slice of that pie. And that's what you pay in property taxes. So for communities that have a big industrial land base, industrial users pay a higher tax rate than you, right? So if you have a big industrial land base, their slice of that pie is going to be quite large. Now, you take a community that doesn't have the industrial land base, right? The exact same dollar amount in terms of the budget, that residential component of their community has to take a bigger slice of that pie. So that's why the industrial land base isn't just important to the economy in terms of jobs, but it's also important to our tax base. So we need to solve for industrial needs too. Well, we all know that the mills, for the most part, aren't coming back. But there still is a demand for industrial land use in Missoula County. It's just changing, it's evolving. So it's more about warehousing, it's more about distribution, it's more about advanced manufacturing. So these types of industrial uses need a whole different subset of infrastructure than the old mills did, right? They need connected transportation networks, they need broadband. They need centralized sewer, they need centralized water. They essentially need all the same infrastructure foundationally as right here in downtown. So that's what we're trying to solve for at the Zwei, is we're trying to rely on infrastructure to address these issues. With infrastructure, we can have development at scale. With infrastructure, we can increase the diversity of our housing. We can evolve with the changing industrial landscape. And real quickly, we can use our land more efficiently, which allows us to avoid growing in areas that have good agricultural soils or wildlife habitat. So what infrastructure is necessary? Well, the three most critical, the must-haves, are water, sewer, and roads. So only in those locations, geographies on the landscape where you have those three things, do you have the ability to have development at scale. Those places are really, really rare in Missoula County. It's very hard to find those locations. But right now, all signs point to the Zwei. And we went through a major planning process starting in about 2016 and ended up with the 2019 Missoula Area Land Use Element, where we did a significant amount of analysis around our, on the valley here on where we could grow. And we took significant public input, around 3,000 comments over about 2.5 years of public engagement. And the Zwei was the location that we identified in the Missoula Valley in the county where growth made sense. So, with that document, we entered a paradigm shift for Missoula County. In the past, we never really used infrastructure to guide growth. But that's what this 2019 land use element calls for. So we can build housing at scale and address our industrial land use. So since that, the adoption of that document right there, the 2019 land use element, we have been strategic in how we've been approaching the Zwei. We've been deliberate. We've created financing tools to help fund the public infrastructure that we need to have at the Zwei. We adopted a regulatory framework in our zoning regulations that makes it really easy to develop the type of development that we want to see. And just on Thursday, we adopted the Zwei Infrastructure Plan, which was this really in-depth analysis of the infrastructure that we need at the Zwei over the next 50 years. So it's back to choices. Whoa. I think we're missing a slide. That's okay, I'll wing it. It's back to choices. You know, just like we chose to clean up the Clark Fork River, we're choosing to be proactive at the Zwei because it is an opportunity to try to address some of the biggest issues that we face in our community.
Thanks, Andrew. Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Jeff Smith with WGM Group. So we've established the why of the why, and also established that infrastructure is a critical component to success there. Next, I'll spend some time talking through about the high-level details around the planning process that went into the infrastructure plan, and also get into some of the recommendations that are laid out in the plan. How did we do on time? Do I have a few extra minutes? Okay, all right. I couldn't get less than 12 minutes, and I'm still going to breeze through quite a bit of this. It's one of the first steps in the planning process, and I'll get you here, was an evaluation of the plan area itself and its existing infrastructure, and then also a forecast of infrastructure needs in order for the area to achieve the vision that's laid out in the land use element, one of the documents that Andrew discussed in his presentation. So starting with the Y study area. The Y area is 3,400 acres in size after we remove rights-of-way for the interstate, highway, and rail. And I keep finding myself coming back to this image. On an acre-per-acre basis, the Y is really comparable in size to the entirety of the north side, west side, downtown, University District, and Midtown combined. I think it's inspiring to think about the Y and the future potential for the Y with that perspective in mind. Let's see here, we're going next. In order to forecast the needed infrastructure in order to support growth at the Y, one of the first things we did was conduct a parcel by parcel development status assessment for all of the 700 plus parcels at the Y. We classified things as either developed, undeveloped, or underdeveloped. Underdeveloped, which are the blue areas on this map, are those properties that have some low-intensity development that we would anticipate to redevelop in time when infrastructure becomes available. And here's a summary of that development status assessment, paying particular attention to the bottom two rows here, the industrial and planned neighborhood areas, which are the areas of the Y that we see the most significant opportunity for growth. Between the undeveloped and underdeveloped areas in the industrially zoned parcels, there's about 800 acres of developable land. And if we see things develop favorably with typical lot coverage ratios for industrial development, we see the potential for 7 million square feet or more of new industrial buildings at the Y. We look at the planned neighborhood areas. Those are the portions of the Y with a zoning minimum designation of 8 units per acre or greater. So the areas that we anticipate some type of urban scale development could occur. There's 1,300 acres of developable land there. And 1,300 acres times 8 units per acre, there's potential for 10,000 homes at the Y. And I think there's a really interesting symmetry between the industrial and the residential development potential. Typically see a ratio of about 1.5 employees per 1,000 square feet for industrial buildings. So with 7 million square feet of industrial building, that'd be 10,000 jobs, coincidentally about equivalent to the amount of residential of homes that we could see develop at the Y as well. In order to plan infrastructure at this scale, we needed to select a time frame. We selected a 50-year time horizon for this plan, which might seem a little ambitious or optimistic at the outset, but might be realistic when we think about what's happened in Missoula over the last 50 years, from the mid-'70s to today. Missoula's experienced quite a bit of change since 1975, including going from black and white to color. And the Y has as well. The Y has as well. I think it's really interesting and inspiring as well to think about what the Y might look like in 2075, 50 years from last year, I guess now. Well after Halley's Comet's made its next lap around the track. So overview of the infrastructure plan categories. So the infrastructure plan focuses on transportation, sewer, including wastewater and stormwater, water, including domestic water and fire protection, and public services, particularly schools, fire protection, and parks. I'll say that planning infrastructure at this scale is certainly daunting, and we needed to establish a sequencing and phasing plan in order to understand how infrastructure could be implemented on that time frame that I discussed earlier. So it's critical in the planning effort that we developed a growth sequence. This phasing map that's on the bottom right here of the screen, that's referenced throughout the plan document, and it was developed based on current development patterns, developments that are either under construction now or in the planning process, and also based on feasible locations for sequential infrastructure expansion, so building from what's there now towards the future. The plan itself is broken down into phases 0 through 4 described at the bottom of this slide. Each phase generally corresponds to the infrastructure that'd be needed to unlock development in each of the numbered areas on this map. Phase 0 is that precedent and catalyst infrastructure, the improvements that are needed before development can begin. And we used 0 for that first phase with the notion that in some areas of the Y, nothing can happen until that precedent infrastructure is built. And there were certainly some proponents to using phase 0 rather than phase 1. I think there's a planning versus engineering perspective where phase 1 is where we would have liked to start, but stuck to our guns with phase 0 based on that binary nature of nothing or something. So I'll start to get into infrastructure specifics, and we'll start with transportation, and I better go quick because I've only got 5 minutes left here. Regional connectivity, the Y, is well served currently by good arterials, so the interstate, Highway 90 and Highway 10, but there are very few active transportation routes and several barriers to plan around, including the interstate highway and the rail line as well. Part of our transportation study, we evaluated the trip generation that we could see at each of the phases of the plan, with the full build-out scenario generating about 100,000 trips per day. That'll be critical as the Y develops to capture as many of those daily trips within the study area as possible. This is going to require that folks at the Y can access the services they need within the study area and don't have to drive back and forth to Missoula. So Y is already a bit of a job center with some pretty significant industrial development. As residential population and density improves, the ability to support other services like grocery stores, hardware stores, and restaurants improves over time. It's certainly a long plan. There's a 50-year horizon, so at each of the phases of the plan, there are specific transportation improvements that are laid out sequentially to support growth as it comes online. Establishing a grid network will be really important so that all of those trips can be spread out over a number of intersections to manage and mitigate congestion to the extent possible. The recommended collector road networks included in the plan. There's also recommendations for typical street sections for complete streets with multimodal transportation facilities for each of the collector sections laid out here. There's also a recommendation for a transportation corridor study of West Broadway from the Y to Russell Street with an eye on roadway capacity, access management, and evaluating the potential for future transit service. Move on to water. So we consider water supply and wastewater and storm drainage on the next slides. Be critical that a thorough understanding of the aquifer characteristics and water quality and quantities established. So one of the first recommendations in the plan is that we conduct a region-wide aquifer study with future water supply development and sewer disposal in mind. And I've got about 5 more minutes on water that I'd cover, but I think I'll skip to some of the important points. So currently, water supply at the Y is provided by a couple public systems. The Y water system on the north side of the interstate serves those areas that aren't hatched in blue and has actually expanded a little bit more to serve a property on the west. South of the interstate, there's a new water system that provides industrial fire protection for the Grass Valley Industrial Project, and also provides service for Montana Knife Company's new facility that's just been built out there. I'm going to take a 30-second detour to the concept of taxable value per acre, and acknowledging that concept is really important as we consider the Y being able to support its own infrastructure and also support public services. So one of the key elements for taxable value per acre in industrial development is the presence and availability of industrial fire protection. Without adequate hydrant and sprinkler flows, we see this land-intensive development pattern where we've got small buildings on large lots and really low taxable values per acre. I'm going to skip ahead because I think I've only got 2 minutes, unless I steal Andrew's minute and a half. It is, okay, all right. All right, on to sewer. So city sewer is available. Brandon mentioned the extension of city sewer out to the area about 20 years ago. The areas that aren't shaded in green here are currently served by the city of Missoula. The yellow boundary on this exhibit is the city's utility service area. In developing a sewer system that can serve full build out of the Y in that area, the rest of the green areas in the yellow boundary is going to require some expansion and upgrade of the existing collection system and probably some plant improvements as well. The areas outside of that service boundary require a different approach. And coincidentally, most of the planned neighborhood areas, or the areas that are still available for development, fall outside that. So the plan recommends a stepwise approach to implement a series of membrane bioreactor, or MBR, treatment facilities to facilitate development there. MBRs were selected because they provide the best available water quality, water treatment, and they produce an effluent quality that could be suitable for reuse as irrigation. Stormwater, I'm not going to hit on that a lot, other than we're in an area without a lot of intermediate drainages in very tight soils that don't readily infiltrate runoff. So a lot of regional stormwater improvements are needed. School and fire, DeSmet, Frenchtown, Hellgate, and MCPS serves the Y, and the superintendents from Frenchtown, DeSmet, and Hellgate provided some insight to the plan in the school siting section. Similarly, the area served by Frenchtown and Missoula Rural Fire Districts both have stations in the area, but neither are adequately sized or staffed to support the full build out. So there's some recommendations in the plan for either upgrading or expanding those existing facilities, and recommendations for future staffing needs and equipment needs. And my time is up, so I'll wrap it up on this. Within the plan, there's a overview and estimate of what we see happening in the next 20 years based on developments underway, currently in the planning process, or like logical expansion of infrastructure. And there's a funding strategy laid out specific to this first phase with a stepwise approach for private, local, state, and federal funding strategies. And 30 seconds over. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so Andrew and Jeff covered the why and the how of why you'd want to develop at the Y, and my job is to cover the why not, or maybe why you would not want to develop there. And I think the main reason for that is that nobody likes sprawl. And whenever you hear of greenfield development on the periphery of town, the immediate mental image is sprawl. That it's going to turn into low density sprawl, which is outward, uncontrolled expansion of cities into rural areas characterized by spread out single-family homes on large lots, separated land uses, and a heavy dependence on cars due to a lack of walkability. These are things that people routinely say they do not want, and Missoula specifically has identified as something they don't want. So you hear development at the Y, therefore must be sprawl. And a reference point, there's probably dozens of these throughout the country, but this is the Front Range of Denver. So from Denver up to Fort Collins. And these used to be distinct towns and developments, and they are now one big blob of development. There's hundreds or maybe thousands of miles of infrastructure, of roads, sewer that you have to maintain, all that kind of stuff. This is what I think Missoula does not want, is where it's one big blob. And so you can see where, in these orange circles, these used to be distinct places that have distinct commercial activity and job centers, and now it's just turned into muck. However, there is an alternative way to develop where you can still meet housing needs, still address industrial development, industrial needs, that is not sprawl, and that is what I would call town center development. So this is a picture of where you have these unique towns, and they have the job centers, which are generally circled in orange. And you can see that because the development is done in a compact manner around the job centers with mixed-use development, that they preserve a lot of the green space, the rivers, trails, farmland, all that sort of thing, where you can still accommodate, still provide high quality of life, still have jobs, and not sprawl and take up every last acre of land from here to Alberton. So, if you translate that into Missoula's Missoula example. So this is this is from Europe. This is very old. All these towns are hundreds or maybe 1,000 years old. They've been around for a long time and yet have not sprawled to merge into one. So this is the alternative, and I think what the county is after for the west part of the valley, of the Missoula Valley. So how do you do that? You avoid bedroom communities and you try and build town centers. What is a bedroom community? Something like this, where you have no infrastructure, low density development. You have half acre, 1 acre, 3 acre, 5 acre lots. It consumes vast amounts of land, dumps a lot of nitrates into your aquifer, and the tax value is not really enough to support the taxable value that's generated by this kind of development doesn't really support all the cost of infrastructure because it's very expensive. And so that's part of the reason why when you have bedroom communities, your bridges fall apart because you're not generating enough tax revenue from the development to actually keep up. So this is what we're trying to avoid. This is a bedroom community nearby. Here's just zoom out just a little bit further. And while that's great, there's nothing wrong with wanting room and space. There's often a disconnect between the actual cost to have a large parcel and what the cost of the infrastructure is that supports your large parcel. So the way that you overcome bedroom community development and move more towards town center is you build around job centers to start, which Jeff and Andrew have alluded to, and which the Y already has. So within a mile of the intersection of 93 and 90, there's about 1,800 jobs currently. As soon as MKC, or Montana Knife Company, comes online, you'll have closer to 1,900, and that will continue to grow because there's quite a bit of development planned for that area, industrial development. So you start with jobs, and this becomes your circle of life for developing at town center. And if you have an industrial base and you're developing the jobs, not that every single person that has a job there is going to live in close proximity, but they often do. And so when you start with the jobs, like Montana Knife Company, Paradise Dental Technologies, Amazon's out there, Everlogs, Aqua Creek Products, there's a lot of manufacturing and development. And this is where the vast majority of the available industrial land in Missoula is here. So you have the job center, and then what follows the job center is the housing, which is on the kind of 3, 4 o'clock or 4 or 5 o'clock on the circle there. The housing follows the jobs, and then as people show up, then demand for retail, for grocery stores, hardware stores, restaurants, medical services, parks, recreation, that sort of thing then follows. So we are now moving into there's already the jobs, the housing's coming, and now the retail demand and services is also starting to show up. So 3 weeks ago, a hardware store and lumberyard and building materials company bought 10 acres at the Y. There's multiple grocery stores looking for locations at the Y, because they see the population coming, they see the infrastructure coming, and that demand follows. So this is the circle of life when you're building a town center of how you want it to go, and that's part of the reason why the county has picked this area for with so much focus, as Andrew alluded to. So the infrastructure, though, so the first part, nobody wants sprawl, so that's why you would not want to build at the Y in theory, but I think that you can do it in a way where sprawl is not a foregone conclusion. And then infrastructure is needed to be able to build a town center, and infrastructure is very expensive to do. And so how do you pay for it? So that's usually the next question that people have is, that's great, water systems, sewer systems, very expensive. How do you pay for this stuff? So this is an example. This is the Amazon building right by the Y, just north of it. The reason it went there is because of that little water tank in the background, because it allows enough fire pressure fire flow to facilitate development of a very tall building that has pretty intensive fire suppression inside of it. As a result, Amazon was able to land there. They now pay about $167,000 a year in property taxes. The way to translate that into how effective that is what's the tax value per acre per year. So it's about $21,700 per year is what that development generates. Before there was, so this is south of I-90 at the Y. This is, they have sewer but no water. And so as a comparison, you look at other industrial developments that are much less intense, and you see that it's between $5,000 and $6,400 per acre per year. So you're somewhere between 3 to 4 times higher when you have access to, fire flow and that sort of thing in terms of what it can generate for the taxes. The taxes then pay for the roads, fire, schools, infrastructure, all the things, the parks. So that's the difference between having water available and not. You can also apply this to residential, where if you have sprawl development or low-intensity development, on the right-hand side, again, nothing wrong with these things by themselves, not picking on anybody, but a 1-acre lot, at this by the Y, generally about $5,000 per year per acre in revenue that it generates for the governing authorities. If you look even just a little bit higher density, just to the west of it is these 1/4 to 3rd acre lots generates between 2 and 3 times more than the 1-acre lots does. And then if you go across the highway to where you've got 1/10 of an acre duplexes, they are generating $30,000 to $35,000 a year, which is between 6 and 7 times what a house on 1 acre generates. So when you think about what that pays for, this is why there's so much interest in intensity and density of development, because counties know what the books look like and how expensive it is to build this stuff and then maintain it and then replace it. So you can, and then again, not a popular topic necessarily, but then you look at apartments. So this is in Lolo in the county, has water and sewer. It's 1.43 acres, 34 units, generates $47,000 per acre per year in tax revenue. So highly effective for funding all the things, all the infrastructure things that are that make the world go round for us. So that's why. Infrastructure is needed to then develop intensity and density. So at the Y, how do you do that? Well, one is you expand the wastewater coverage and all the things that Andrew talked about. So water, wastewater, and roads. We have a decent road network to start. Water at Grass Valley Industrial Park is about to be completed and turned over to the county here in about a month. And then a wastewater system plan for Grass Valley Gardens. These are 2 projects that we're involved with. And so the ability to build a town center happens when the infrastructure is there, and then you build at decent or medium intensity and density, and you generate the revenue necessary to not only pay for it up front, they can pay to maintain it, pay to replace it, and generate a surplus, which then ends up subsidizing the lower density development throughout the rest of the county. So this is an example of like what the town center would look like, where it's complete town around open space that's preserved, with residential, medium density, single family, the whole gamut. And that's a rendering of the entrance. So that's just one example of how there are potential problems in terms of cost and avoiding sprawl, but the way that the county has laid this out over the last 7 or 8 years provides an avenue to build around town centers as opposed to doing the typical suburban sprawl. And I think the outcome and the product will create great places to live that people will desire and will keep Missoula, Missoula. So that I'll wrap up with that, and I think we can hand off for questions.
Thank you for all of your speeches. There was a lot of big words in there. So anybody that has questions on those big words can now talk to your neighbors and friends at your table, because now we're going to start our table talk. For those of you that have not been to City Club, table talk is the fun part. This is where you can look around your table, left, right, forward, not backwards. But this is where you all can exercise this freedom of thought and maybe debate, come up with some questions, maybe 1, 2, or 3, in case somebody of your neighbors steal your question, which happens. Then you'll have a backup question to ask. One of our board members is going to be coming around. We'll have 2 microphones. They'll come around. Please stand up. Introduce yourself, and then we don't have a ton of time, so if we could not have a big narrative, just speak pretty concise and get your questions asked, that would be awesome. Remember, we're here for civil discourse and free exchange of idea. I know this is a slippery slope, but we feel that this group has the maturity to respect those boundaries. Please start the discussion. We'll come back in about 10 minutes, and then we'll get some of your questions answered. Thanks much. So we are going to have 2 people walking around. Please raise your hand. There should be one. I didn't mention this, but people have been here forever. But there should be one person that asks a question from each table. So there should be a scribe. So please raise your hand and ask your question. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan Holloway along with Century 21 here in Missoula. And our table, this is my whole brokerage back here. Our question is, you mentioned, I can't remember which one it was talking about there was input from the superintendents for the surrounding schools. But we're wondering how the smaller schools, especially like Hellgate, who's at capacity, and DeSmet, who is very small, how they're going to be funded to support the growth that's going out that way.
Well, hey, so yeah, school districts they're in charge of their own funding, right? So it's not really what the county would do necessarily, and our planning is help them figure out how to fund their growth, as they are technically a different type of government than the county. So it's also county or school funding is not something I know anything about. We were working with the school districts more on how to accommodate the number of students that they're going to see in the future and help them find suitable locations for potential schools. We're going to need new schools out there, and with the school districts sort of overlapping each other, it's going to be a difficult nut to crack. So one of the things in the infrastructure plan that we identified as a follow-up step and implementation action is to work with the school districts. We can help fund a study, an analysis of how growth is going to occur and when and how the school districts can help or think about financing and building more schools in our area. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Minette Johnson with Five Valleys Land Trust, and I was just wondering what kind of provisions there are for parks and open space in the initial proposal that you discussed.
Thanks for that question. So there's a park siting section in the plan. I think it's noteworthy that there are few, if any, publicly owned parcels out at the Waianae and few public parks. So as we're planning for residential growth, there are some recommendations in the plan for considerations of open space. And if you looked at one of the examples on the screen there at the end, that Grass Valley Gardens project certainly has a large set aside in the middle for some agricultural uses and some parks. Part of the reason that people come to Montana, Missoula specifically, is that quality of life piece. And parks and public facilities and trails and multimodal transportation, active transportation is going to be really important for that area to be successful. So there are some recommendations for planning level considerations, and then recommendations to evaluate opportunities to purchase property to preserve some park space as the area develops. But really hit it at a high level in the plan at this point.
Hi, I'm Jennifer with Jim and Mary's RV Park out at the Y. And there's a lot of talk about the Grass Valley development going in south of the interstate, and then we've got a lot going in behind us and across from us north of the interstate. And I guess my question is, with talking about making it a city center and less sprawling, is there a plan for connecting or making the highway interchanges very divisive between those two areas, and so how to make that more accessible, either walking or biking or whatever, and getting people into downtown Missoula even?
Yeah, thanks for that question. We mentioned some of the barriers that exist when we talked about the lack of active transportation facilities out there now. So the interstate, the rail line, the highway. If I could get back to the exhibit that showed kind of the overall plan and the collector grid network, it will be a ways down the road before that area that's kind of in the Butler Creek area in that northeast quadrant develops, just because of the amount of infrastructure that's needed. But we're certainly considering and evaluating the opportunities for overpasses of the rail for active transportation and roads as well. And then the notion that perhaps there's an underpass for active transportation on the west side of the interstate is something that's in the thinking as well. I think that each of the collector streets that are built is going to be really, really critical that they include that trail multimodal component as well, and we're building complete streets along those collector routes. So it's a challenge for sure. We've thought about it. There's a lot more work needed to be done to implement it, but also to design it all. You mentioned the intersections and the interchange, and I just want to hit on something that I didn't have time for earlier. If folks are accessing the Y now, you'll note the north side of that interchange. If you're heading west from Missoula and you want to get to the south side of the interstate, that existing interchange has some capacity issues now. It's a stop-controlled intersection, so if you're heading west and you're trying to take a left onto Highway 93, that stop sign backs up now during peak hours. The traffic starts to back down that on-ramp. So one of the early stages will be an evaluation of that intersection and a determination of the right type of infrastructure there, a signal or perhaps a roundabout. And that those improvements will certainly do something to improve the trail and multimodal access across that barrier that is the interstate.
Oh, okay. You're going to hold it. All right. Sam Kula, Montana Democrats. Pretty lively discussion at our table. I guess one of the bigger picture questions we had is if we fail to plan for and manage this type of growth that we're anticipating, what are some of the effects we would expect to see over this coming, decades in terms of employment, cost of living, just quality of life? Like, what if we, don't spearhead a good growth plan?
I kind of think it goes back to that Venn diagram I showed you, right? Where the three things that we talked about: quality of life, no growth, slow growth, and affordability. They don't intersect. So if we don't continually work to find places for homes to be built, as a county, as a local government, then eventually we're going to fall really far behind, and Missoula is going to become more and more, it's less and less inclusive and less affordable. So it's really important that we're always thinking about 10, 15, 20 years in the future, and where's the next spot going to be? Where are the right spots, I should say, for growth and development? In terms of the industrial space, I think what happens is if we're not planning ahead, we as a community, in terms of our employment base, will become less competitive, right? So our economy will become less diverse, less resilient over time. It will affect our property taxes. The more of our tax burden will shift to the residential users. So. These things won't happen overnight. They'll happen over a very long period of time. So, it's tough to conceptually see what might happen. But we understand that what might happen if we don't react is not great. Another thing that might happen is the development still is forced, people still want to come here because we can't put up a gate, right? I was at a conference a long time ago where Governor Schweitzer said if we put up a 12-foot fence around Montana, developers will bring a 13-foot ladder. People are still going to come to Missoula. And so I think if we're not providing places for neighborhoods like Matt's talking about, Matt's trying to facilitate as a developer, what we're going to get is low-density rural sprawl on wells and septics. We're going to see increased contamination of our aquifer and locations. We're going to lose all our farmland. We're not going to see elk on the side of the hill. So.
Amy Solenberg with Climate Smart Missoula, and what came to mind at our table here was with if anyone can speak to, given our community and county climate goals, any clean energy infrastructure that has been discussed, plans needs? What are the incentives and opportunities for procuring clean energy? It seems prime when you're planning this way for district level heating, cooling, geothermal systems, and just wondered if someone could speak to that.
I think I've got the terminology right now, but there's an effort around a municipal investment fund that I think the county and Clearwater Credit Union have worked on. Might specifically as far as like geothermal and groundwater heating and cooling, the aquifer out of the Y is really unpredictable. So if we think about the University of Montana, I think every new building and a lot of the existing buildings are now they're equipped with a series of wells, a supply well and then a discharge well, and we're able to use the water temperature that's coming out of the ground to cool our buildings. That probably isn't feasible out at the Y unless we looked at some type of different systems. So certainly a lot of focus around water reuse and otherwise, but the scale and scope of the plan that we put together didn't focus much on clean energy. We did spend a lot of time focusing on reducing vehicle miles traveled and that notion that we want to capture as many trips as we can to reduce our carbon footprint from that perspective. I don't know if anybody else has got anything to add on that front.
Just on the wastewater treatment system, there's early discussion about they consume electricity like everything else does. So prepping it so that allowing solar in the future is there. So in terms of the structure of the building and the treatment facilities are designed so that it can allow for solar in the future. So at the outset, that's I don't think going to go into phase one, but the infrastructure should be there.
Hey, everybody. I'm Steph Dolan from the Poverello Center. Lucky for you guys, I will not talk about homelessness today. But my question is, have you guys seen a success story similar to what you're talking about, especially as it relates to creating a hub around advanced manufacturing, given that many of those economic opportunities result in kind of middle income levels and how are developers going to react to the need to build kind of middle income housing in that community to fill that gap, especially the gap that we have here in Missoula too?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That's the economic development and housing are tied together. So the attraction of employers, one of the main things that they look at is the cost of the housing for their team before they come in and hire. So they do these workforce studies and housing studies. So it's almost of a chicken and the egg problem of that you need the ability to provide housing at a reasonable price, both for sale and for rent. And then that helps to attract the manufacturing side and vice versa. And so one of the things that the county has done very well is when the zoning update that they did 3 or 4 years ago now allows for this wide variety of housing types. So you're not as constrained to building a single family home on a 7,800 square foot lot or 5,400 square foot lot. You have the ability to add additional units and different housing types. So you're not stuck with a 2,000 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. You could do several units that are smaller. You could do cottage developments, things like that, where you have these different access points in, so providing the middle income housing. So that's been very helpful from the county to allow for that side of it. And then I think pairing it with the infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, broadband, all those sorts of things. They're like dual magnets that you have to have both of them simultaneously. There's much larger economic development questions and attraction efforts that are ongoing with innovation hubs and some of those things to bring in some of the advanced manufacturing. We have a very good seed for a couple of industries in Missoula, and so the hope is that if you have the two elements, the housing plus the infrastructure, that you then can start the snowball rolling in terms of attracting that kind of industry. But I think MEP and some of those other groups would be able to talk at length about some of those efforts. Yeah, I mean, there are many of these where they, I mean, to some extent, Bozeman has done very well at attracting specific, not saying that we're referencing Bozeman as an example, but or a model to emulate, but they have done well at attracting specific industries, photonics. They have not necessarily kept up on the housing side of it, but yeah, photonics and other related industries, they've done very well at. There's other, I mean, to some extent, there's other examples. I'm happy to connect with you offline and send you some examples of where specific industries are targeted, or that there's a that geography or the knowledge base in a given area will basically set the stage to attract specific industries. So there's plenty of these examples, and like I said, happy to connect with you later and talk you through them.
Hi, Jason Suchecki, Keller Williams. Wanted to know, I understand the county is involved in the water system on the south side of I-90, and I wanted to know if there was any thought put into addressing the Y water system by the county.
You start that one. So the plan recommends, one of the initial recommendations is that water system studied by the county for the potential for purchase. And certainly some work to be done there. But as we think about creating, I don't think I got to this in the presentation, I ran short of time, but creating a wide water and sewer district that eventually serves that entire area through a network of connected supply, storage, and also distribution. That water system is going to be a critical component of the backbone of that future system. So at some point in the future, it needs to be folded in to a system that, a network of systems that is administered by the county. So more work to be done there, but one of the plan recommendations was to study that system for potential purchase.
Hi there, my name's John. Our question had to do is, does the city of Missoula have any financial responsibility to creating this infrastructure?
Not, but really, I mean, there's existing sewer that's owned by the city out there. One of the things early on that we did was petition for movement of the boundary to allow for urban service, which was denied by the city several times. And so that's part of the reason why we in the county had moved towards the creation of a new system. So it's really not, I mean, these are going to be county-owned systems and county-managed. When that with the exact time frame when that happens is TBD. But the city's doesn't really have much involvement out there.
Zach Chelberg with First Security Bank. I know Grass Valley Gardens has acquired 187 acres out there already. To reach the full scope of the development as you presented it, obviously you're going to have to acquire other privately held parcels right now. So what's kind of the timing, the process, and the plan to acquire those other private parcels for future development?
Yeah, I would say that sequential development beyond anything that starts now is going to be really led by the private sector. So we have a stepwise infrastructure implementation plan that could allow for that. So we start with infrastructure that first facilitates development in the areas that are easiest to serve. And as you move beyond a project like Grass Valley Gardens down to the south, those are all privately held parcels, which would eventually be developed by the private sector with the assistance of the county to the extent possible for infrastructure and otherwise. So yeah, it really will. There's a big lift that the private sector will carry in fulfilling this future vision, and really we're trying to set the stage so that the private side can be successful in that effort.
Hi, Bert Caldwell. Our table had a question as to, in the development of a city or town district, how do we avoid strip malls and make it a little less commercial?
that comes down to the zoning. So in 2002, Missoula County adopted a zoning code. It's a fairly we took our old zoning that was written in the 1970s, which obviously you get a lot of strip malls in, and we kind of tossed it and threw it in the garbage and wrote an entirely new code that was definitely focused on more urban form, resulting in better urban form. So without getting too, I mean, we talked about big words. I could really get into some big zoning words right now, but what we've done in our zoning code is a significant portion of the Y is zoned it as neighborhood residential. A neighborhood residential is a residential forward zoning district, however, allows small commercial interspersed within neighborhoods by right, so there's no special zoning approvals that are needed. And these commercial buildings have to be treated a little bit differently, where how they're sited on the property is to be towards the front, along the sidewalk. They have requirements for how windows are placed and everything. So it's made to facilitate neighborhood scale and walkable neighborhoods. There are some, because of the nature of the Y, the way that it is today, with a big truck stop on 2 major highways, there are some areas zoned that are more auto-centric. But I'm gonna kind of prod Matt here to talk a little bit about Grass Valley Gardens and what they're doing with their development and how the zoning code allows this huge flexibility in kind of creating that town center.
So in reference to where the strip malls occur, you may have seen on the zoning map that one of the diagrams that I think Jeff showed, there's a dark red area or bright red area up through 93. That is where the strip mall-esque buildings would be allowed by the zoning or closer to it. As you get off of the main corridor and get into where the more heavily residential, probably 90 to 95% residential areas will be, and you have the 5 to 10% of commercial intermixed throughout. The size of the buildings is much smaller. It's not 80,000-foot Walmarts or whatever the case is. It's 3,000, 5,000 square foot. Ideally, it's ground floor retail elements that you can enter off the street, and then you try to stack uses above it. So it's more in that vein, more like you would see in a downtown than you would see at a Walmart or something like that on North Reserve. So the orientation is much more towards the hip strip scale of development or downtown in terms of mixes of uses for the commercial components rather than Costco, Walmart, Lowe's, all that kind of stuff. So that's generally what the county is oriented towards.
Clint Barch, retired, and I have a residence in that area. My concern is with all the development out there with traffic, to relieve the pressure from downtown. I know there's been talk for 30 or 40 years putting a bypass from the Y around the west side of Missoula. Is that still in the plan?
Yeah, this plan didn't contemplate a bypass around Missoula. And there's certainly been a lot of discussion about the routing for that. Does it go down Tower Street? How is that routed? There is, if you think about the Y and the connectivity between Y and the city of Missoula, there are 3 routes now. So we've got the interstate, West Broadway, and Mullen Road as well. So as the best job that we can do of distributing traffic across the network, understanding that some of those routes are going to need improvements over time, that was really the focus of this plan. We didn't plan for a bypass. I would say one of the recommendations of the plan, that corridor transportation study for West Broadway from the Y to Russell Street, certainly intended on investigating the potential for future transit service. And in the Y plan, there are a couple park and ride locations that were identified and potential configurations that we might think about in those locations, with the thought that we can reduce some of the congestion if we can get transit service to a couple isolated locations at first. So yeah, it's going to take a lot of moving parts to try and address that congestion. Spreading things out across a grid network will be important. But yeah, to the bypass specific, I'm not sure if there's efforts ongoing to continue thinking about that or not. I haven't heard that notion for a while now.
All right. Thank you so much for all of your expertise and your questions. One more round of applause for Matt, Jeff, and Andrew. A couple of notes. I'm going to end it a little bit early just to let you know, since this venue is in such high demand, unfortunately, we only have half of this room for the next 2 months. So keep an eye out for our registration to open for February 9th. We're going to have kind of an update from all of our safety protocols, meaning Mike Collier, the Missoula City Police Chief, Jeremiah Peterson, Missoula County Sheriff, and Lonnie Rash from the Missoula City Fire Chief will be here to kind of give updates on what's going on in their different departments. We're also looking for a venue because we're going to have to move offsite again due to a scheduling conflict in April for a State of the Community. So I'll update you all on that. One big thank you to all of our departing board members. We have Alex Karklins, who was Mike wrangling for us. Julie Maloney, she's going to be off the board as well as Dave Peppinger and a few others. So Yenny Rohrbach is over here. She's our administrator. She's the one that's running around and doing PowerPoint presentations and all that. I just wanted to have everybody give her one more thank you and a big round of applause. And we will see you all on Monday, the 9th of February. Appreciate it.
Nice to meet you. Yep, take care. Yep.